over to Mr. Som Sen-Gupta to talk to you about new trends in hotel and restaurant design. Som, over to you.
It's nice to see you all wide awake after 2 nights of partying. I'd like to introduce the next business session, which deals with new trends in hotel and restaurant design. Essentially, what we're going to touch upon here is the philosophy of design and how it can be best applied to hotels and restaurants in our country and everywhere else. Som over here is going to take it from here. Unfortunately, we don't have Mr. Patki who was to join us for reasons beyond his control. So it's up to him to keep us engaged for the next 30 minutes. And since we have a young budding architect, my proposal is that we'll try and make this interactive. I'm certain we are going to have a lot of questions from people in the audience regarding design, regarding their new restaurant philosophies. So as opposed to a single-sided monologue, let's keep it bilateral here without interrupting him too much. Yes, Vijay? I don't know. He's in a t-shirt, but that's good enough. Come on over. A little background on architecture from my family. My father was one of the senior architects. For those who've been to Mumbai, he developed India's first beachfront property called the Sun and Sand Hotel. As an architect, also the Sea Rock, and has done in his life over 30-40 hotels all over the country, including certain landmarks like the Sea Lord at Kochi and so on and so forth, Hotel Transit at Bombay. My brother is the designer for the Four Seasons and the GAW Marriott's. So I hope that I can bring some value to this discussion. And we'll request Imtiaz to also chip in with his speciality of restaurant design. Having said that, Som, over to you.
Hi, good morning everyone. And firstly, thanks a lot to FHRA for inviting me. And the main topic that I've been given, to speak about is the meta trends that you have right now in design. And I'm not going to talk about materials, I'm not going to talk about finishes, and I'm not going to talk about the kind of room layouts that you should have, because all that is, subject to the particular brief that you end up, discussing with your architect, your designer, and your branding team. But I'm going to talk about 5 things that's going to really change the way you look at design. Globally, there's been an entire sea change in the way people look at design. Design is not only being seen as an aesthetic part of what you do in hotels and what you do in hospitality spaces. There's been a change in thought process. So I'm going to start my presentation by kind of illustrating those trends which are going to hit you very, very hard, in the next 5-6 years, and you're going to realize it very soon. So the next biggest edge that you're going to be really, really concerned about, right, is going to be design. You're going to look at design as a business process. You're not going to look at design as just an aesthetic intervention. Typically what happens in traditional modes of planning a hotel or a restaurant is that it's just looked at as a wrapping paper to the services that you bring in, but you're not going to look at it as a wrapping paper anymore. Experts all over the world have kind of distinguished the way economics of our generation has evolved. So earlier you had the resource economy. We are all familiar with the resource economy. You have more resources. You put in money, you draw more resources, you have more people, and you're doing well. You're selling your products, you're selling your goods. Suddenly there's something strange happened, and suddenly knowledge became very important. You have technology, you know how to build a better phone, you know how to build a better product. You started doing well. Lately what's happened is there's been talk about the design economy. And mostly this talk has been spearheaded by companies outside the hospitality industries, but nevertheless very, very important companies. Like you have the example of Apple Computers, who are, as you know, very design centric. So their whole model is based on the design economy model, where they feel that design is going to be the biggest differentiator. Now, when I'm talking about design, I'll take you to the thought which says that design is actually a business process. And suddenly you say, okay, I have a business process and design is part of it. How is design a business process? We need to explain design as a verb first. That's what we have done. So design is a business process. How is it a business process? I'll explain it. Fundamentally, when you look at design and you talk to your architects and branding guys, they say, okay, design is where I'll create a look and feel. I will create an experience. So they are talking about the noun, not the verb. They are talking about the entire process of creating culture, and you're very familiar with this process. But the first one is what that people are really opening their minds to, and the people who've done research all over the world, and they suddenly noticed, they said, okay, how do we look at design as a process? They took the designer and separated the designer from the process, and they said, okay, there is something really interesting that a designer does that we can use in our business. What is that interesting thing that a designer is doing? What he is doing is he is processing his mental abilities that all of you are capable of doing. He's not doing anything, really extraordinary. For example, if I tell you that all of you, the session is over and we'll walk out of the door, we'll all walk out together, right? That's the normal way of acting. If suddenly, for some reason, all the doors close and, God forbid, there's an accident and we need to get out, suddenly, the other part of your mind will start working with, probably somebody will pull up a chair and break the glass and try to get in. So here what you're trying to do is you're doing some sort of out of the box thinking to get out of a situation. So when you're planning your projects, a designer is bringing in that capability, and that capability is not your traditional way of problem solving. So I will just explain this process to you very quickly. What design thinking is. See, design thinking starts with building a scenario where you have a hotel, you have a restaurant, you create the entire scenario around which your property is built or your restaurant is built, the context. So context creation is a very important part of design thinking. How do we create context? We have brand research, which is again gaining a lot of prominence, which is done by a lot of design and branding companies all across, which I'm going to talk about a little later. There is ethnography, where you do ethnographic studies. So suppose you're opening a hotel in Goa, one really needs to know a little bit about the local population, what are the things that's going to tick them off and whatnot. Obviously semantics, the meaning of certain things, culturally what is acceptable, what is not. Also benchmarking, and normally when we talk about trends, we are just talking about this minuscule part of the entire process where you look at what's happening everywhere. That is good, but that is not the central activity of your design process. All of this is very, very important. And definitely, behavior studies is also important. Then the next part, which I was talking about, where what a designer does is the analysis bit of it. The aesthetics, which obviously you are very, very familiar with, because I'm sure all of you have built hotels and restaurants, where you look at the aesthetics of it, you do a trend analysis. So you've looked at all the trends, and now you analyze why certain trends work, why certain adaptations, let's say somebody's done something in his room and why it works, and why somebody's done something and it doesn't work, why a restaurant works, why it doesn't work. So the analysis of the trend. Then form giving, the central most overrated activity that a designer brings on the table, form giving. I mean, I feel this is the most overrated, but yeah, it is a very important part of what a designer does. Then intuition. Intuition is also a very important part of your decision making. And materials and finishes, which is again a very overrated part of what a designer does. And I will keep stressing this because traditionally this is what has been championed as what the designer is going to bring to the table. That's not going to be what, I mean, it is the process that one should embrace. The biggest problem which I feel with the hospitality industry, and I work a lot with hospitality clients, is the last part of this design thinking process, is the complete lack of respect for prototype and testing what you've done. I have never seen, and I have fought with hoteliers who made rooms, and I've told them, please, you've made a sample room, please live in that room for 2 days. You live in that space and you tell me, I don't need to do it, you do it, you will tell me if it's right or not. I am not God as a designer, and don't expect, your designer is not God. He is a human being like you. And more, he needs to test, he needs to reconfirm his ideas. And the only way you're going to reconfirm anything is by building pilots, by keeping records. And any professional agency worth its salt should actually get into this sort of a behavior where you're actually living in your space. I'm sure all hoteliers make a sample room, but make sure somebody stays in it for 2-3 days and gives in the reaction. I think that's very important. Now I'll just quickly talk about a project because where we actually did that, there was a lot of problem that the brand faced at one point with various reasons, and we were kind of involved in completely turning around this brand, which was at that point a fast food brand. And without getting into too many details, I would just say it was a strategic design project which had both the aspects, which had aspects of branding and aspects of interior design. And the migration of the brand was actually handled by us, where we started, with the assumption that we don't know where we are going, and we started with a research project. And when we did the research, we realized that somehow Yo China is, as a brand, is equated with fast food, and it's not equated with Chinese food. So we needed to make that transition from fast to casual dining. And we upgraded the brand, and we did also a lot of studies on lighting and all that, and without getting into details. But it's an example of how design thinking can change entire brand. And this whole initiation of brand change was started by the design team. And these are some pictures of this project. Then another point which is very important, which I want to talk about, is localization. When this brand, it had to build a hotel in Jaipur, we realized that we are getting a heritage property. Normally you don't get a heritage property to do a restaurant, but we were very lucky. But we needed to integrate the outside and the inside, and we didn't go against the brand, but yes, cookie cutter model was not followed, and we did something slightly different. So this is the look and feel. Now, when I'm talking about branding again and again, I'm going to talk about the second biggest meta trend that's happening. It's branding. It is not architecture. It is not building spaces. It is about your brand. Your brand is everything. And having said that, I would quickly make 2 observations, which you guys definitely understand better than I do. Is that the franchise model is purely based on a brand promise. It is not based on anything else. And, it is also because of the brand that 2 parties align themselves with each other. What I am saying is that increasingly you will have brand consultancies and system designers do your experience mapping. When I'm saying experience mapping, it is exactly that kind of thinking where you actually build a room and you stay there and you test it. It is where you actually talk to your consumers a little bit more and understand their thought process. This is somehow missing from the traditional way of working. Now, there's another thing that would happen more and more is you're going to work in a co-creative model. Now, one can go on the internet and read about the co-creation model. A lot of people are talking about the co-creative model. and it is the next biggest thing in marketing. So in fact, you will find a lot of stuff that is not very clear, but let me explain it in my way. Now in a traditional model, what you have is you start with ideation, right? I mean, I'm sure you follow this process. You get to the brief, then you get to the selection of experts. Now what happens is once you, as owners, operators, you've covered the first two steps, you've created a basic idea that you're going to build something like this, then your experts come in. And your experts typically are your branding agencies or your architects or interior designers, and then you do what is known as tactical brainstorming, where you're looking at the tactical part of how to implement that project. So the most important decisions you've already taken with your own insights, your own understanding, and pardon me saying that, but your own limited exposure to situations. But what has happened is that this is the main mode of doing business today. And then you get to design resolution and you do execution. This is working perfectly fine. But there are a lot of constraints to this, and things are changing across the world, and co-creation is being seen as a better and more efficient model. And right now the software industry has really embraced co-creation. You don't have a lot of hotel companies even across the world embracing it. I am trying to do it in a limited way with our limited capabilities and scopes, but I will just quickly explain what it is. It is about putting your opportunity at the center of, your opportunity definition at the center. And you're creating a design team around it. So you start with a branding agency, you start with your brand team, and you put in your spaces, which is your architecture and interior teams together. And then you start doing something which is called imaginative and deductive thinking, which is something that we need to do more and more to do interesting projects. So what is this imaginative thinking? This is exactly what I explained earlier, is that you look at aspects of decision making that you've not taken. So when you're taking a decision, you've struck down elements of your decision. So you put all those decisions on a chart and understand why you have not taken those decisions. Once you map it out, you'll realize maybe you should have taken some of them. So this is a process that's gaining a lot of momentum. And you also have a process of refinement which was there. Nowadays you have version 1, version 2, version 3, and we anyways continuously we do it. So the biggest take that I'm saying is that traditional boundaries between architecture, interior design, and product systems are going to disappear more and more, and you're going to see this happen. You're not going to talk to only a branding agency or a interior designer to source or solve your problem. You're going to look at a team who you're going to assemble at first go, and then you're going to put them in a room and they're going to give you the solutions. Now, this I quickly explained is design research. Now, design research is gaining a lot of momentum. Now, I would just start with one quote, this is what Ronald Reagan said, and I'm sure you guys are also aware of, this saying. And all traditional research actually over the world is based on statistics, all traditional research. And I have had clients come to me and they've given me heaps of data and said, okay, you claim that you are a design researcher, you do systems design. Now you evaluate from this design data which is done by the best agencies of the world. And it's very difficult to read through and actually analyze and take a decision. We have a very simple solution to this. We've said, okay, stalk your customer. And we've done this several times. We've done projects where increasingly we've spent a lot of time with customers who are there, looked at how they behave. I'll give you a very simple example. It was a packaging project that we were doing without naming the client, and we asked the customers, what do you think of the packet? And everybody said, it's wonderful, it's a great packet, and we really like it, And when it was given to, finally it was given to one of the customers, the guy, he instinctively, he was looking for a tool to open it. he knew that he would not be able to open that package without a tool. But when he was asked about it, he didn't react that way. So what I'm saying is what customers are telling you is not what you need to hear. This is the single most important point of design research, that a design research team can get you that intuitiveness that you don't have. What I'm saying is design research will become the backbone of your decision making process. More and more you will work with design researchers who will solve your problems, who will actually literally stalk your customers, and they will understand what happens. To illustrate this, we did a design research project for one of the biggest, in a way, hospitality brands, Jaguar, because they deal with the hospitality industry in a big way. Where the brief was that, somewhere consumer connect was being lost in big cities. Smaller cities, they were growing, but consumer connect was being lost. So we did a design research project where we understood the constraints the client had, and based on that, solutions were created. And the solution was that we realized that the consumer did not associate Jaguar with bathing; it just associated Jaguar with taps. So that was the biggest disconnect that they had. But Jaguar had a whole lot of products. So we, from too good to resist, now we've changed it to experience bathing. So the thought process is this, and the entire